Hey everyone, welcome to Adventures in Everyday Cooking, where every day can be an adventure in your kitchen. My name is Heather, and today we're tackling the sourdough starter. Now, some of you have been given your sourdough starter from your BFF, and you have absolutely no idea what to do with it. Or you know what to do with it, you're just a little scared to actually start on this adventure. Well, let me tell you what, 2 years into this adventure, and I feel as though I have a few things to share. So I thought I would do a quick video and show you how I do my sourdough bread. Starting with an unfed starter, I will take you through the entire process, and hopefully it'll be great. Are you ready for this adventure? Let's get started. Okay, let's just go over the couple tools that you are going to need. You are going to need a unfed warm sourdough starter. Now, what do I mean by warm? That means it needs to have been out of the refrigerator for at least 12 hours, and you cannot feed it for that 12 hours. We're also going to need a new jar, a rubber band that you can place around your jar so that we can see how much that starter has grown. We're also going to need something to stir it. You also need some unbleached GMO-free flour. My preference, this is King Arthur's flour. I love it in this bread recipe. You also need some room temperature water, or warmed to like 100 degrees, anything over 100, and you will kill your yeast, so don't do that. A lot of the mistakes that I see people make are that they take this whole jar and they mix this whole jar and make their first loaf of bread. This is not the right idea. You want to take the starter that your friend has given you and you want to portion it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my new jar onto my scale and I'm going to zero it out. Once it's zeroed out, then I am going to add in about 20 grams of my starter. That's a little bit more than a tablespoon. You can eyeball it, but you only want to add about a tablespoon of starter per loaf of bread. So that is the first mistake that I have seen people make. So right now, this is a very unfed starter. In fact, maybe I can show you. See that liquid watery substance? That's what they call the hooch. And actually, you want to mix that back inside of your yeast because that's just the byproduct of your yeast saying that I am really hungry and I am ready to be fed right now. So I'm just gonna give it a good mix. It does not harm anything. You can, if it gets a little gray or it gets like weird looking and you just would rather pour it off, you can pour it off. But it does add to the flavor of your bread, so don't worry about that. So the first thing we're gonna do, 20 grams of this unfed sourdough starter. There we go, perfect 20 grams. Okay, now it is important because this is very hungry that you go ahead and feed this in a little while, but let's focus on the bread that we're making today. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and zero out the scale one more time. And now we're gonna start to add our water and our flour. So with my baster, I like to do it because I don't like to fish out water and I like to be very precise. We're gonna add to this jar 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour. Now, what do I do when I accidentally go to 54 grams? I take my baster and I just kind of suck a little bit up and add a little bit back in to make sure that I am about 50 grams. And I don't have to worry about cross-contamination over here because I'm only doing sourdough right now. So this water is not contaminated because I'll probably use it to feed my starter. This is my starter jar and this is my bread jar. So they're totally different. Now we're gonna add in 50 grams of flour. And I'm gonna go ahead and add it in with a clean spoon because I wanna be able to fish it out if I get too much. But usually I'm pretty good at this. So 50 grams of flour. Now, some people will ask me, can I just measure it with a measuring cup? I mean, yes, you can. However, it is much better bread and much more precise if you can weigh. So just invest in a good scale. I will leave a link to the scale that I use that I've been pretty happy with over the last like 3 years. And that's it, 50 grams, 50 grams. Now we're just going to mix it up with our long skinny scraper here. And we're going to make sure everything is mixed together and that there is no dry ingredients left anywhere in this jar. Now this will just make one small loaf whenever we're done with it. So if you want to make more than one loaf at a time, you just have to double, and it is fine to double. It will rise just the same, and it will be just fine. But make sure the jar that you use has plenty of room for a double expansion, because that is what you're going to need. Now, if your starter was room temperature and you used warm water, this will take only 4 hours, like to the knob, to come to perfect ripeness. If you are dealing with a cold kitchen, cold water, or cold starter, this could take anywhere up to 12 hours to reach its final height. So just keep that in mind as you mix up your starter. I always use warm water because I want to keep that yeast and bacteria very happy. All right, so as you can see here, I have a perfect jar of my bread starter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll my rubber band down to the bottom, and I'm going to make sure that it is at the exact spot that my starter is, because that will tell me exactly how much it has risen. So right there, that's all we need. I'm going to replace the lid. Now I'm going to put this somewhere warm. 80 degrees is ideal. 75, 80 degrees. If you don't have an area of your house that is 75 or 80, you can put it in the microwave. That kind of keeps things insulated. I have been known on cold days to wrap my jar in a hand towel to keep it insulated. So I will do a hand towel this way, and then I will do a hand towel this way, and then I'll just put some rubber bands around it to keep it nice and warm. However, you really just, if it's warm, you really will only have to wait for 4 hours. But I bet you're wondering how I feed my other starter. Now, since I already took some starter out, I'm actually going to weigh and measure how much starter is left in here. Measure this out, and I know that about every 20 grams is a tablespoon. So I'm already at 60 grams, and look at that, we're gonna stop at 80. And there's some dregs left in here, probably like half a teaspoon or so, but 80 is perfect. That gives me 4 tablespoons of starter in here. So I'm gonna zero it out. I'm gonna add 200 grams of both water and flour. Now, some of you will be asking me, why are you making so much sourdough starter? Well, actually, I have several friends who have requested starter from me. So I knew this day was coming, which is why I made bigger batches this week. So I was kind of prepping for it by growing my starter, making bread, and making sure I had enough to go around for all my friends. So 200 grams of flour now. Now on purpose, I'm gonna add too much. Oh, what do? Well, since I haven't stirred it up yet, I can just reach in and grab it out. All right, now we're just gonna mix it up the same way that we mix this, okay? And we're just gonna mix until we see no dry flour left. All right, and that's that. Now this guy is fed. He's ready for my refrigerator, which means that over the next week, I will be able to dip out some of this for my friends, mix it up, and give it to them as a fed ripe sourdough starter. Does that make sense? So as this grows in the refrigerator, if a friend asks me, I can take a tablespoon out, mix it together like this, and then give it away to them as a already fed, ready for the next feeding the next day. So, and this will make quite a few. So I do have a few friends who are, and of course, my baking bread of every day. But there you go. There is my starter for my refrigerator. And now it is ready for all of my week's baking. Some people ask how often I feed my sourdough starter. I feed it when it looks hungry. Since I use my refrigerator every day, I look at it and I can see it through its life cycle. And when I see it down at this rubber band again, I know the time is coming that I need to feed it again. Now, that doesn't mean I have to feed it again. In fact, you can wait a couple weeks to feed it. It's pretty resilient because when it's in the refrigerator, it's nice and tired. It's not eating as much. it might be a while before it absolutely needs to get fed again. When you start to see that hooch on there, or that stuff, that gray kind of watery stuff, that means your sourdough is hungry and you should really think about feeding it. I have accidentally gone 3 to 4 weeks without feeding mine, maybe even 6 weeks, and it is still fine as long as there is no mold and it smells good. And you'll have a variety of smells. Sometimes it'll smell acidic, sometimes it'll kind of smell sour, sometimes it will smell like apples. This is all a normal in the process of sourdough. So in the refrigerator, this is gonna go. And we're gonna set a timer for that one, and I'll see you back here in 4 hours. Okay, so we have risen quite a bit here. As you can see, we are doubled in size and we are ready to make bread. So what we're gonna do first is go ahead and measure out our starter into the water. Now I usually make sure that my water is about 100 degrees. That way it incorporates a little bit more nicely. But if you're worried that your starter might not be ready to go, you can do a float test. Let me show you how. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a teeny tiny bit of this starter and we are going to push it into our water. And if it floats, see that it's floating? That means it's ready to go. So now we're gonna measure out 100 grams of this starter. So I'm gonna go ahead and tare it. And then 100 grams is about this entire jar minus about 20 grams. All right, there we go, 100 grams. Now, what we have left in this jar doesn't look like very much, but believe it or not, if you use the scrapings method, you can actually make your next bread like this. You would just measure a little bit more. So this is about 20 grams of starter left in this jar. It's kind of spread all over and on the spatula and on my knife, but there is a way that you can do a scrapings method and never have to discard anything. If you are more curious about how that works, check out Bake with Jack. He's phenomenal. Okay, so now we're just gonna stir and combine that all together. And as you stir, it'll get a little bit stringy, but it should combine really well. Okay, now everything's gonna go into your mixer. So I always put in my starter and water first. Then I put in all of my flour and my salt. And now I'm just gonna let this go for, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds or so. Right at the end of 30 seconds, you will see inside the mixer, I need to help that flour get down inside my dough. So I'm just gonna use a scraper and scrape it down inside. And this should be the only time that I have to scrape this bowl. Okay, and then we're gonna give it another minute. Okay, and that's it. That's all of the mixing that it's gonna need in the stand mixer. We need some kind of a container that is gonna contain our bread. So I'm gonna put a tiny bit of olive oil. Some people don't like oiling their containers, but I really like oiling mine. It puts a little oil in the bread and it helps it not to stick. Okay, and this is the texture that you're looking for. Kind of goopy, and this is called the craggy dough. This is exactly what you need. And now we're just gonna leave it there. Now I want you to remember this texture, because for every half an hour over the next 2.5 hours, you are going to turn this dough and it's going to change phenomenally into this beautiful dough that you're gonna be like, wow, I made that. So I'll be back in half an hour to show you what the first turn looks like, and then half an hour, half an hour, half an hour, half an hour, until it's ready to go in the refrigerator for the night. All right, we'll see you in half an hour. Cover, now half an hour. Okay, it's been half an hour, and now it is time for you to see what's inside this bowl. Okay, so as you see, it looks pretty much the same, but it is not. We have now auto-leased this, and we have built structure without doing a single thing. So the first thing that we're gonna wanna do is get our hands wet. So I have a spray bottle here. We're gonna wet the hands. And now what we're going to do is we are going to turn this dough. So we're gonna take this edge of the dough and we're gonna stretch it up and over like this. And we're gonna turn, stretch it up and over. And look at how pretty it's getting just by stretching up and over. And we're gonna keep doing this all the way around the bowl. And if your hand gets a little sticky again, just spray it with some water. And now watch this. I'm gonna pick it up and look at that. I have this really strong piece of dough that is gonna be a beautiful sourdough bread. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna fold it in on itself a couple times. Now, if it sticks to your hand, see how it's sticking right there? That means I didn't wet my hand quite well enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and wet my hands all over. I use a spray bottle for this because it's just easier than running back and forth. And I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna bounce it around like a baby. And then I'm going to stretch. This is called the stretch and fold. So stretch it up and around my hand like this. And then I'm gonna set it all back down again. Is this the correct way to do it? I don't know, but this works really, really well for me. Then, after it's stretched, I'm gonna do it one more time the opposite way. I know I already did it this way a second ago, but my hands were a little sticky, so it didn't do it very well. So I'm gonna take it, stretch it, take it, stretch it, and then I'm gonna fold, 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 and set it on back down again. As you can tell, we already have a much stretchier, much more pliable dough. So now what we're going to do is we're gonna spray lightly the top of this dough. We're gonna let it sit here for another 30 minutes. Okay, it's been half an hour. Now what are we gonna do? Basically the same thing. We're gonna wet our hands, but this time I wanna show you what the dough looks like. Okay, so remember when we picked up the dough and stretched it before? Look at how much it stretches now. So we're gonna do that same thing. Pick it up and stretch it. Pick it up and stretch it. And just do it all the way around until you can do that no more. Okay, I feel like that's good. I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna spray up my hands. And then we're gonna do our complete stretch and fold again. I call it the baby stretch. I don't know why, but I'm going to do it like this. I'm just going to stretch and roll and fold. And as you can see, the strength in the dough, we're already starting to get a nice spiral. So this will stay like this. Of course, it will come together, but this is what you want to see. When it goes all into a glob, then you know you haven't built enough strength yet. So, and again, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna pick it up, and you'll notice that as you start to work with this dough more, it's not gonna stretch as far, and that is perfect. So that's it, that's all we're gonna do. And look, it almost looks like bread already. And it's only been 2 stretch and folds, and we have 3 more to go. So we're gonna leave it just like that for another half an hour. All right, now here we are 30 minutes later, and check it out. See how it has the curl there? That means it's stayed, which also means that it has a lot of strength already started. And each of the little bubbles that you see, that is the fermentation happening in the dough. So we're gonna do the same thing that we did before. So we're gonna pick up the edge, we're gonna shake it out, and we're gonna toss it over. Now I want you to notice how smooth everything is getting. Isn't that crazy? With very little work, this is building its own strength. That's what makes sourdough so chewy and delicious. Okay, and then we're gonna do the whole picking it up like a baby again. But look, it doesn't stretch very far. Do you see that? It's not going to anymore. That's it. This is as far as it's going to go this time. So what I'm gonna do is instead of folding it around my hand, I am just going to stretch as far as I can and just tuck it in and call that good, set it back down again. And then I'm gonna pick it up from the opposite direction and do it one more time. And basically, since it's so strong now, we just have to go like that. So there we go. I love how firm it is. And if you wanna check if the dough's ready to go for fermentation, you pick up a little bit like this, and we're doing the window pane test, and look at how stretchy it is without breaking. That means in half an hour when we do our last fold, it is gonna be ready for a bulk fermentation. Now we're gonna do one more rest of 30 minutes and one more fold before into the refrigerator it's going to go until tomorrow. So one more, be back. All right, it's our final turn of the evening. So we're gonna pop this lid off, and as you can see here, the dough has flattened out just a little bit, but that's okay. We're gonna wet our hands, we're gonna give it some turns. And this last time, I'm not gonna pull up from the sides. I'm actually gonna pull up from the center. And look at how stretchy this is. Oh my beautiful. Oh, oh, oh. And we're gonna fold it right in half and set it right back down. And we're gonna turn it around. This dough feels fantastic. And look how much it has changed. It's gorgeous. And we're just going to roll it back around again. And we're probably gonna do this about 4 times just to ensure that all of the strength we can get into this has been gotten. Look at that. Look at that roll in there. That looks great. One more time. Fold it over on itself. And perfect. Look at all those fermentation bubbles. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna replace this lid, and we are gonna get it into the refrigerator for no fewer than 12 hours. So I'll see you back here in 12. All right, welcome back, you guys. It's been well over 12 hours and our bread has come out of the refrigerator. Now it is important that you bring it to room temperature. And the best way to bring that to room temperature is to place it on top of a cooling rack. I know that seems counterproductive, but the temperature of your house will warm all the sides of the bowl. When it sits on a counter like this, it's actually going to retain some of that coolness underneath, kind of like an insulation. So grab yourself a cooling rack, lift it up off of that cooling rack. Now I have a 360 all the ways, warm air circling this, and it should only take about an hour to come to room temperature. And as this warms, it is going to rise a tiny bit, but not very much. We're back. This dough is room temperature, so I'm gonna get rid of this. And we are gonna pour it out onto our counter. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a very tiny bit of flour, and we are going to sprinkle it over the top of this dough ball. And that's only because I don't want that side to stick when I turn it over. So now I'll take my dough scraper and I am going to flip it over on the other side very carefully. And this is a very sticky dough, and it should be, because what we're gonna do next requires it to be very sticky. You can wet your hands during this, but usually I don't have to because it's not so sticky that it sticks really hard to you. But if you need to, go ahead and wet your hands. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull this out just gently. Imagine it like this is the head. We're stretching the head. Now stretch your arms. Now stretch your legs and stretch your bottom. Okay, so it's gonna look kind of like this. And then we're going to fold inward. So I'm gonna fold the head on itself. I'm gonna fold the arms on itself. I'm gonna fold the legs up and over, and then the bottom up and over. Now comes the roll. So this might get a little sticky. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna powder my hands just a tiny bit. And we're gonna pick this up and we're going to stretch and roll. So we're creating more tension in the dough as we're pre-shaping this dough. And then I'm gonna push and stretch. Do you see that? Push, stretch, push, stretch, push, stretch. And I'm gonna keep going until we get to the end. Now, you see me, I just floured my hand just a little bit because that side was sticking just a teeny tiny bit. Push, stretch, push, stretch, still sticking just a bit. Push, stretch until we get to the end. So here we have our first pre-shaped loaf of bread. It kind of looks like a cinnamon roll if you ask me, because there's all of these rolls, but we can do one better and shape it a little bit better. So this is all called the pre-shape, and this is the first shape. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my hands and I'm gonna push, I'm gonna grab a hold of it gently but firmly. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it's true. So we're gonna push as we hold on, and as we push it, it's gonna grab onto the counter, and we're going to stretch that dough over the top of the dough ball. So look at all these beautiful bubbles that are in here. So we're gonna do it again. I'm just gonna go stretch, and we're just stretching it just a little bit more as we pre-shape this. If you see any humongous air bubbles, you can pop those, but I like to leave mine in there because I like that little bit of crispy crust, and our next turn, it's gonna go away anyway, so just leave them there. The other thing that you can do is to get rid of these little like belly buttons is we push the opposite direction just a little bit until it rolls under, and then I'll turn it around and do the same thing. Push it until it just rolls under. And now I have a round dough ball. So if I was making this into a round loaf of sourdough, which I am not today, but that's okay because pre-shaping, you can change it. You can change your mind before the final shape. So that is perfect. All right, so what we're gonna do is we are going to flour the top of this, and we are going to let it rest covered with our towel. So this is the towel that I'm going to line my banneton with. There's no reason to use 20 towels. It's a clean towel. I'm going to put it right over the top. And I'm gonna let this rest for another 30 minutes. At the end of 30 minutes when we get back, I'll show you what to do, and then we'll be done. All right, welcome back. And now when we uncover this, we're gonna know a couple things. Number one, we're gonna know how strong our dough is. So as you can see, it did not stay in its nice tight ball, but it relaxed a little bit. That is absolutely fine. What you don't wanna see is it go all the way out into a pancake. If it kind of relaxes so much that it's like at least double the size that you started with, you're gonna wanna perform another pre-shape until it really holds together in a firm ball. So I'm gonna take my bench scraper once again, and we are going to flip this over on its belly. The floured side is on the bottom, and the side with no flour is now on the top. And we're gonna do the same thing. So we're gonna take that head and we're gonna stretch it out just a little bit, and take the arms, stretch them out, and we're just gonna stretch it out just a bit. Not a super lot, because we don't want to lose any of those air bubbles. But this time, this is our last one, so we have to make it count. So I'm gonna fold in the head again, fold in the arms again, and then fold in the legs, and then finally the little bum. So again, we're gonna take this and push, and push, and push until we are all the way to the end. Now, this shouldn't be super delicate. If it's delicate and it's sticking to you still need to work with it a little bit. But mine is looking really good. So this is my final shape. Yes, I still have the swirls. That's totally fine. It'll relax itself in the refrigerator again. So I use that same cloth that I had covered with it, and I'm going to just flour it really well so it does not stick, because it's going to get hydrated in the refrigerator. And then I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to lay it upside down in the banneton. So it's going to look just like this. See that? And if you see it start to pull away a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to pinch this and kind of go like this. Okay, now into the refrigerator. This is gonna go for a minimum of 2 hours. At the end of 2 hours, it's gonna be bake time. Don't cover it, just put it in the refrigerator. Be back. All right, it has been well over 2 hours, and my my dough is ready to come out. And you can definitely feel the difference when you poke this dough before it went in to now. In fact, now it feels very rough and hard, and when it went in, it was very soft and pliable. So I have a piece of parchment paper here. I'm gonna set it right over the top of my banneton, and we are just going to flip it right over. You don't have to be super gentle, but be quick. Now I'm gonna take my lame, which is just basically a razor blade on a little wooden dowel, and we're gonna score it from the base of the loaf to the base of the loaf. Now, some things that people do that I've noticed some of my friends doing, they just go straight down, and that's not actually what you wanna do. You wanna actually go at an angle, which is why this thing is curved like that, and get under the crust like this going all the way down, because that will create what they call an ear. It will pop up and you'll get this nice crispy ear on the side. So we're gonna start maybe over here at the very bottom, and then we're gonna keep the lamb on its side and cut the side under the side of the dough, just above the crust, all the way down. And then usually I put some wheat little sprouts in here just because I like the way it looks. So I have preheated my Dutch oven in the oven for 30 minutes, and I am going to put this into a hot Dutch oven, and we're gonna cook it for 25 minutes. Then we're gonna take the lid off and brown it to our desired color. So back comes my water, out comes my barbecue gloves, my oven gloves, because I will burn myself. And we're going to get this out and then back in again. All right, so I'm gonna lift the corners of this paper and I'm gonna set it right down inside. And then once it's in there, I'm gonna take some water and spritz over the top. But first I'm gonna grab my lid, and I'm gonna set my lid down because the barbecue gloves are only good for about 45 seconds of heat. So here we go. So I'm gonna spritz all over the top, and then I'm going to replace the lid just like that, and we're gonna get it baking at 450 for about 25 minutes. I'll see you back here in 25. Oh my goodness, check out this beautiful bread. You can see that it has that little ear. I would have liked a bigger ear, but it's fine. It's fine. I think I sprayed a little bit too much water on there. It's fine. It's still going to be absolutely fantastic. And as you can see, it has a nice brown crust and so crispy. Can you hear that crispiness? That is from the water. The water actually helps it to develop that crust and be really crispy. It is so amazing. It's now been cooling for, I don't know, about an hour. So I am confident that I'm okay to slice into it and show you what's on the inside. I love sourdough. So here we go. You hear how absolutely crispy that is? And look at that. Look at the beautiful sourdough that is on the inside of that. All of those bubbles tell me that the fermentation of this dough was absolutely perfect, which means that this little slice of heaven right here is gonna be absolutely amazing. And usually when I have the crust at the end, it's my favorite bit. See how much crust has developed on this bread? Amazing. It makes it absolutely amazing. It's like the heavens sing when I have sourdough bread. And yes, I make bread now every 24 hours because me and my guys, we eat this whole loaf in 24 hours. And I am not embarrassed to say that because this is good bread and this is a good recipe and this is a good method. And if you have not checked out Bake with Jack yet, this is not his method completely, but a lot of what you see me do, I have gleaned from Jack and I so appreciate him. So if you have not checked Bake with Jack out yet, please do. So that's it, you guys. If you enjoyed that video, give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. I do videos several times a week, and I watch people on YouTube that inspire me, and Bake with Jack is one of them. So if you wouldn't mind going over there and giving him some love, that would be awesome. I am so excited that I have his new book. This weekend, that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna glean through his book, I'm gonna bookmark things, and you better believe you're gonna see that book on this channel in the future. All right, you guys, we'll see you on the next adventure. Bye.